Welcome to the Ephesiology podcast in our series, Archaeology Meets Missiology, the mission of God in the records of time. Today we have Michael, our resident ephesiologist, and I'm Andrew Johnson in Houston, Texas. And we are thrilled to be joined by Dr. David Falk. David Falk is a specialist in ancient Egypt and the Bible. He holds 3 master's degrees. He holds an MDiv and an MA in Near Eastern and Biblical Archaeology and Languages from Trinity University, may it rest in peace, and a 3rd master's degree in Near and Middle Eastern Civilizations from the University of Toronto. His BA is in philosophy from the University of British Columbia, and he has written a dissertation entitled Ritual Processional Furniture, a material and religious phenomenon in Egypt, which established a new cultural context baseline for rituals by examining the material culture of temple furniture. Dr. Falk, I think we are honored and wowed by your presence on our podcast today. So thanks for joining us.
My honor to be here.
Oh, you know what? It's our honor, David. So great to see you. As we were just reflecting before we came on the podcast, it's been many years since we've interacted, at least at this level. And it's so fun to be able to have this opportunity to catch up with you and hear about your journey from Trinity back in the days into archaeology and Egyptology and all of those things. So I'm looking forward to catching up.
Well, as I said, it's my pleasure to be here, and your class on new religious movements was one of the best classes I ever took. So,
well, you are too kind.
That was a phenomenal class, absolutely phenomenal class.
And look where it took him now. That's great. Okay, David.
I'm studying old religious movements.
yeah. That was fun, Dr. Cooper. Now, can we go back further? Okay. So, David, help me understand a bit more of who you are. What are some things that are interesting to you or help add some color to the David Falk experience?
Oh, the David Falk experience. Well, after my Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy, I went into the computer field, where I was a computer systems engineer for 20 years.
Wow.
I had the privilege of working on the world's fastest supercomputer at IBM. I wrote the boot code for it. So it was called Project Blue Gene. And so it was during that time I started looking at going back to graduate school.
Okay.
And I got a job transfer, change jobs, so I was just happened to be within like 3 miles of Trinity, the Trinity campus. So for the first 2 years at Trinity, I was doing a full-time job and doing full-time school.
Huh. Well,
wow.
Okay, so you're going to have to tell us, how do you go from computer engineer to Egyptology?
Okay, very easily.
Okay.
First of all, you are a kid who's fascinated with ancient Egypt. Okay.
So that's already established.
Watching these Saturday morning documentaries on King Tut, pyramids, Curse of the Mummies, that sort of thing. Okay. So you're raised with this fascination of it. Okay. Well, then the job you transfer to has a tuition reimbursement program for a graduate degree, with no caveats on what you get the degree in.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So it's like, oh, well, I don't want to do any more computers. I want to sort of switch roles here.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to take a divinity degree.
Okay. And so so you came to Deerfield, enrolled in Trinity, and that's where you did the Master of Divinity.
Yes.
Okay. Now,
that's where I met James Hoffmeyer.
Okay.
Who was an Egyptologist.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, there's an Egyptologist here. And then, of course, the little kid came out in me, and it's like, I'm going to specialize in everything Egypt.
That's great. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, you know what it was? That was a special time at Trinity back in those days because I
It
remember
was.
I had Dr. Hoffmeyer for my Old Testament theology course during my doctoral studies.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's like anything. You have a professor that's passionate about his topic, then you
Hmm.
become interested in what he's doing. So
Mm-hmm.
I went from there and took his Near Eastern archaeology course at Trinity for a part of my doctoral studies as well, and had just been fascinated by archaeology, not so much Egyptology, I suppose, although it's of interest. But what a neat testimony of Dr. Hoffmeyer's life to have left that impact on his students.
It was a great time to be at Trinity.
Yeah.
It was a really special group of teachers at that time.
Mm,
I mean, you of course, but I also had guys like Bruce Fields and John Woodbridge, these giants in who are just excellent teachers and very inspiring as well.
yeah. Yeah. Neat. Okay. So you do your MDiv at Trinity, and then you do an MA in Near Eastern archaeology.
Yes, also at Trinity, because it was kind of like, well, they allowed they allowed you to do that dual master's program.
Right.
So I was able to get 2 degrees out of them.
Wow.
And then I went to Toronto and did a third master's degree there, more to get up my language skills in the Egyptian language.
Okay.
And then I went to the University of Liverpool after that, where I did my PhD, and I was the research assistant there of Kenneth Kitchen.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
No
really?
kidding.
Yeah,
Good. I mean, I only remember reading about him.
yeah. He just recently passed away, but yeah, I was his research assistant for 3 years. I was
That's
more or
great.
less his last student.
Yeah, yeah. Well, tell us about that. How was that experience? Well, first, tell us who Kitchens is. Why is he important?
Okay.
And then tell us about that experience.
Kitchen is best known for 2 things. He's known for his Ramesside inscriptions, where he did basically transcriptions and copies of inscriptions from the Ramesside period from all over Egypt,
Okay.
and it's like 5 massive volumes, the big
Wow.
magnum opus work. But he's also known for writing a book called the On the Reliability of the Old Testament,
Mm.
where he basically compares archaeology to what we find in the Old Testament and says, okay, yeah, this is a reliable document, historically speaking.
It holds up.
Yeah, holds up.
Huh. Interesting.
So he's really famous for that book.
Yeah, interesting. So in that way, he almost parallels not the right word, but his experience in the Old Testament was something like Ramsey's experience with the New Testament.
Yeah.
That the documents are holding up to
Mm.
archaeological and historical scrutiny.
Yes. Yes. He's
Interesting.
also very well known for his chronological work too. He
Mhm.
redefined how chronology was done in the 1970s and 80s.
Mm.
Okay. And what was the impact of that on
Um,
Old Testament studies?
it changed the way we date a lot of things in Egyptian chronology.
Hmm.
Like it pretty much made the high chronology obsolete overnight.
Okay. Tell us about high chronology. What
Okay.
exactly
Yeah,
is
you're
that? for
you're
those-
teaching us a lot. So thank you for allowing us into your classroom. Please go on.
There's basically what's called a high and a low chronology, and they differ by about 25 years. Okay, roughly speaking, more like 20. But um, there's this debate over when the dates of the Egyptian kings were according to what was your chronological method.
Mm.
Hmm.
Okay, now the high chronology tended to use things such as Sothic cycle dating and stellar calculations, moon calculations, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Mhm.
But what Kitchen innovated was that you could take documents that spanned across cultures, in this case, the Amarna letters, and he compared the kings mentioned in the Amarna letters to the kings that basically the ones between Egypt and, say, Assyria or Babylon or the Hittite Empire. Some of these cultures have a very reliable dating. Like Assyria and Babylon have incredibly accurate and reliable dating. So by taking those sort of synchronisms, and a synchronism is a piece of data that connects to two cultures or persons. Okay. So by taking these letters that connected, say, a king in Egypt to a king in Babylon, he could narrow down the dating of the Egyptian chronology to just a few years. It was an incredible piece of work. And it moved all the dates up to by about 20 years, roughly.
Okay. Okay. So, in other words, what you're saying is that when we think about the time period of the Old Testament, we have to keep in mind that different cultures, different empires had different methods of dating.
Yes.
And so when you look at each of those methods, then, and this sounds like what Kitchen has done or did, you begin to line those up with each other and you get a much more perhaps accurate, complete understanding of dating going on in that part of the world.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow. Wow. So how was it studying with him?
Oh, it was interesting because he wasn't how do I say this? He wasn't a direct teacher. He taught things very passively. So you'd just be sitting around and he'd be doing something and you're just watching him do it. And you sort of pick things up by osmosis.
Wow.
Like one of the things he was probably the leading epigrapher for Egyptian texts. He also did old Arabic texts as well, but he was a leading epigrapher in this field. So just seeing how he did epigraphy was fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. Probably one of the biggest lessons I learned when it came to, say, doing epigraphy is he would just live with an inscription. Like he would put it on his table before he even looked at it, before he even went to try to decipher it. He'd put it on his table and leave it there for days. And have tea around it, have his dinner with it nearby, and just have it sit there. And it's like the way he worked is, and then he just pick it up and just be able to read it. Just by living with it. Yeah. And I remember having to do this with a piece of text myself, and I put it up on my monitor. And I just left it there. And it's like days later, I looked at it and go, "Hey, wait! I recognize this. It's like magic. It's just like magic."
Wow.
Interesting. Wow. Okay, so you study with him, and you write your dissertation on furniture.
On furniture.
As one does after all of this training. Now furniture.
But there's a method to the madness. Okay.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. When I did my proposal for my dissertation, my advisor told me that it's too broad. There's no way you'd ever finish this in one lifetime. He told me, pick one sentence out of the proposal and do your dissertation on that.
Oh yeah.
That's good counsel.
Yeah, he said, trust me, you'll have more than enough material from one sentence.
Oh wow. That's great. And so it just happened to be that sentence had to deal with furniture.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So why furniture?
Why furniture? I did it as a context study for studying the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh. Now, and you're going to tell us more about that because you've written a book on the Ark of the Covenant.
I've written a book on this called The Ark of the Covenant in its Egyptian Context, an illustrated journey.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm leaning in. Go
but,
on.
But before we get there,
Okay, don't go
tell
on.
us about the furniture. Why furniture? How does furniture lead you to the ark?
Well, I was reading a little stela called the Bentrush stela, which talked about a piece of furniture that was carrying an idol that was delivered to the Hittite king from the king of Egypt.
Wow.
And it's like, wow, that sounds vaguely familiar. So it's like, okay, I wonder if, and I asked the question, I wonder if we can compare Egyptian furniture to the Ark of the Covenant.
Uh-huh.
So my dissertation was a massive context study to compare Egyptian furniture to the Ark of the Covenant and see if it compares. And I found that this 3,000-year history of furniture in Egypt, of ritual religious furniture in Egypt. And I found that I could narrow the Ark of the Covenant to a very specific period in there.
Okay.
Just by the features that are described on the Ark of the Covenant. Like the cherubim facing each other, the rings on the foot, the kind of poles it used. All of that can be narrowed down to a specific context in Egyptian history.
Wow.
It's like this. It's like this.
So, yeah.
It's like having a movie, okay? And somebody on the set takes a few still photographs of it. Okay, everyone from the movie dies. You have no more information about it other than the movie and the photographs. You can tell where the photographs were taken by the movie. You can compare the photographs and go, oh, yeah, I recognize this scene from the film. It has every photograph is a snapshot of a piece of the film.
Okay.
3,000 years of ritual furniture is the film. The Ark of the Covenant is the snapshot.
Okay. So let me understand then. Are you saying that the Ark of the Covenant is borrowing Egyptian features that are then incorporated into the actual covenant?
Yes.
The Ark.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
and the Israelites did this all the time.
Okay. Well, I mean, this was normal, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was normal.
So often we think of these cultures as being separate from one another when the reality is there's somewhat of a fluidity in these cultures.
Look at Hezekiahs Seal.
Yeah.
The seal of Hezekiah, king of Israel.
Okay.
It has a Wadjet disk, a solar disk, an Egyptian solar disk with wings. And in the claws are two ankhs. It's got so much Egyptian symbolism in it. It's not even funny.
Okay. Okay. So what are the implications of this then, David? What is that telling us?
What the implications of this is that we, just from the iconography on the Ark of the Covenant, we know that the Ark of the Covenant was built between the reigns of Amenhotep III and Ramses X.
Okay.
Okay. So it narrows down the window because you can date things by iconography.
Right.
Iconography and furniture design is very specific to a time frame. So you can date it by its features.
Okay. Okay. So
it provides us with evidence that it's either late 18th dynasty or 19th or 20th dynasty.
Okay. Give us
that ballpark.
For those of us who are neophytes, give us a year. What is the time period of the 18th dynasty?
Okay, it's roughly between 18th dynasty is roughly 1550 to 1300 BC.
Okay, and then as we
Amenhotep III, his reign is going to be about 1350.
Okay. And then as we connect this then into the Old Testament, where are we?
Okay, we are roughly around 1265.
Okay.
That's when the Exodus roughly takes place.
Okay. Good. Good. This is fascinating. So now, of course, I'm thinking about these things missiologically and how cultures share features and so on. And so often, I think when we approach the biblical texts and we read those things, we think that the Israelites and later the Christians, they're doing these things in isolation. But the reality is that they're not. And there's a lot of borrowing going on. And so while the Ark of the Covenant is a unique feature of Hebrew religious practice, its art, so to speak, is not unique.
What were the Israelites doing in Egypt before the Exodus?
Mm-hmm.
They were making furniture.
Uh-huh.
They were tilling the fields. They were making mud bricks. They were doing all these different crafts and things that other Egyptians did.
So it should be expected then, as they might craft whatever artifacts, I guess we would call them today, that there would be some Egyptian qualities to them.
Oh, yeah. Well, the text tells us that Bezalel was trained in all the crafts of Egypt. So he would be doing these things in an Egyptian way.
Yeah, it does strike me, Michael, at least as I've heard you say this multiple times, that Israel is borrowing something from the Egyptians. I almost feel that might, to me, that strikes me as not the right word, as if anybody in Israel say, I wonder what the Egyptians are doing, we will borrow this. It's as much as them drinking water. It's a part of, I don't want to say who they were, but it is their general milieu that they are in. So they wouldn't say, okay, now we're going to do this Egyptian thing, and now we're going to do this specifically Israelite thing. It's just, it's who they are. It's not like if I do something and say, okay, well, I'm going to try to think about how an American would do this, and I'm going to put this on. I'm American. So it would become very naturally to me to do that. So I wouldn't say it would be borrowing anything. It's just, they made the ark because this is how they thought. This was the skills in which they utilized, and it would also match with all the Egyptian things at the same time, right?
Well, they're definitely doing what they religion in a way that they understood it to be. Okay. Back in those days, if you had a god, you put him in a box. You put him in a sacred box because that was necessary for sacred space. You needed to keep gods in this protective, almost like a space capsule. But the space here isn't oxygen versus vacuum. It's sacred versus profane space. You needed to keep your deities in a field of sacred space to keep them happy. And the Ark of the Covenant is essentially a portable temple of sacred space.
Well, how about answer this, David? And I would imagine that you would know this. Are there other examples of such arks that you've come across? Yeah.
Yeah, you see them, and for example, the temple at Luxor. Luxor Temple has an example of a sacred bark. Quite literally, it's a boat with a shrine on it. And in that shrine are two female goddesses that stretch their wings. They face each other. They stretch their wings in front of them. And they make this area of sacred space for the god Amun-Re. And this is sort of a repertoire. So you go to all various temples in Egypt and you see this pattern over and over and over again.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense, and yeah.
The only thing that the Ark of the Covenant doesn't have, that really its analogs in Egypt have, is an idol.
Okay.
Basically, And with the Ark of the Covenant, there is no idol. It's a sacred, essentially a kind of sacred bark without an idol.
Right.
Which inverts a lot of the ritual that surrounds these things. Like in an Egyptian temple, what would happen is the idol of the god would be taken from its bark, dressed, fed, and then put into his naos at the back of the temple at night for him to go to sleep. Okay? Then they wake him up in the morning, dress him, feed him again, and move his idol back into his sacred bark so he can rule by day.
Okay.
Gods in Egypt need to be cared for with human hands.
Right.
But with the Ark of the Covenant, there is no idol. God never sleeps, he never leaves the throne, and he's not cared for by human hands.
Yeah.
That one small change inverts the symbolism.
Interesting. Yeah. And that's such a powerful change.
Yeah.
And there are consequences, aren't there, that we read about if
lots of them.
And does come in contact with that ark.
Well, it's not quite like that. I think that's sometimes overstated.
Okay.
One of the things we have to keep in mind is these seem to be the summary judgments that seem to happen in relation to the ark tend to be matters where there's more than one offense. More than one offense going on here. Like, for example, when the guy is struck down when he touches the ark. First of all, the ark was placed on a horse cart. That's an ox cart. That's a big no-no. That's a big no-no. It's supposed to be carried by the Levites.
By the Levites specifically, yeah.
You find out, though, the guy that got zapped isn't a Levite. He's a Judahite. David's nephew. And you find that out in the little genealogy at the beginning of the passage. They don't come out and say directly he's David's nephew, but you can figure out by the genealogy he's David's nephew. So David is putting his boys in there to move the Ark of the Covenant. So it's a double offense.
Yeah.
The Ark's cart, followed by the nepotism. He's a Judahite. He should not be touching that Ark.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. You've been at this now for several years. You have been in Egypt. You have done all sorts of things related to Egyptology. Tell us, what has been one or two, three of the most fascinating things that you've come across in your research and just in general as you think about
just narrow it down.
The whole field.
Just narrow it down to two or three major contributions.
2 or 3. Oh, well, we'll give you 4.
There's picking out a few examples. One of my favorites was actually doing a computational chronology. I have one of my websites that I have runs a program that computes chronologies and actually finds out if those chronologies are valid or not. And this this was a huge advance.
Now you're going back to your older
data
days
sets
when you're a computer engineer.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting.
Now,
in fact, I've got a paper just coming out on this very soon. So
okay. Now, is this like checking against archaeological finds? Like we know that this is here, so if you
synchronisms uses the synchronisms, we found out that the use of synchronisms can be used as a validity check for a chronology. Because think of it like kind of like the gears on a clock. Okay, they have to fit just right, otherwise the whole mechanism jams. Okay, works similar in chronology, where if your dating isn't right, if you haven't dated your kings correctly, or assigned reigns are too long or too short, everything's got to match for the whole chronology to be valid.
All right. Well, that I can see the importance of that in just dating some of the events that we read about in the Old
Well,
Testament.
up until that point, there was no way to check if a chronology was valid or not.
Hmm.
You had to, it was kind of a trust me, bro kind of system where anybody could throw up a chronology and say, well, you can't prove it's wrong.
Interesting.
It's the first time we can prove whether a chronology is correct or not.
So then,
now, it can't prove that a chronology is correct, but it can prove if it's incorrect.
Yeah,
and
that's fascinating.
That ability to disqualify a hypothesis is something we've never seen before in the field of chronology.
Interesting.
And so, what you're saying, again, you gave the Exodus time frame. You said 1265. Is that what you said?
Yep.
So, for those then that hold to a 1450 time frame,
it's impossible.
It's impossible. And
it's
so
impossible.
So
here's okay, because that is usually coupled. See, when we deal with theories of the Exodus, the theory isn't just usually a date; it's usually a king as well.
Right. So Solomon.
So that hypothesis is normally coupled with 1446, and they usually say it's Amenhotep II, who's king of the Exodus at that time. That's actually impossible because Amenhotep II wasn't even on the throne in 1446. And we could prove that with chronology. He comes to the throne in 1425.
Okay. And
so
this is
so I'm working through it. So just already it can't be Amenhotep II.
Yeah.
Because he didn't come until 1425. Obviously 1425 is not 1265, so already there is an assumption that Amenhotep II had to be with the Exodus, and you are decoupling those and also saying that the Exodus didn't happen with Amenhotep II.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what about the kings? If somebody, again, like Eugene Merrill, I think, holds to the 1446.
Yes, he does.
So, and when you said kings, you were obviously referring to the Egyptian kings. In my mind was, it's Solomon's temple. And so some of the things like Merrill's going to hold to is we know, or we assume we know, the dedication of the temple happened on this date. So how does this
966, 967. And everyone agrees with that date for the dedication of the temple. Where we disagree on is that 480th year of the Exodus. Okay. One of the things we've noticed by comparing 1 Kings 6:1 to other ancient Near Eastern texts is that it follows a pattern called a temple dedication inscription. Okay. And a temple dedication inscription is a little piece of a stone inscription that's typically put on a temple that dedicates it. It basically says, okay, we're building this temple on this date, or we're renovating this temple, and it's usually tied to a date of numerological significance.
Okay.
So it's numerology. It's an idealized number. And these are very, very common in ancient Near Eastern documents. Like, for example, in the temple dedication of Tukulti-Ninurta I, he says 720 years passed since the building of the Temple of Ishtar. Okay. Well, it wasn't 720 years. First of all, it's off. That number's off. But 720 is a very interesting number.
Okay.
It's 60 times 12. And the Mesopotamians had a sexagesimal math system.
Okay.
So for them, that's a very sort of an important combination. I mean, 12, 12 is a symbolic number across the ancient Near East anyway, like 12 tribes, 12 apostles, that sort of thing. But the equivalent to 60 in, say, Canaan was 40. This is why you find the number 40 all through the Old Testament and even in the New Testament. It's an idiom. 40 is an idiom. It's an idiom that means an unspecified long length of time.
Okay, and so 40 times 12 is 480.
Yep.
Thus, it's on the inscription.
Yep.
Interesting. You know, this is so fascinating to me, David, because, I mean, when you say numerology, everybody goes, "Oh no, we can't do that." But it was so common, not just back in the Old Testament days, but even going through the New Testament, and even after the Christianization of the empire. I mean, numerology just seemed to be a part of what we do it as well.
We do it as well.
Well, lucky
it's my lucky 7
or whatever.
My unlucky 13th.
Yeah.
911 versus 911. Same number used to mean two different things.
Yeah.
If I'm telling you that I have a 911 day, it's a day where I've had an emergency. If I tell you it's a 9/11 day, I'm telling you it's a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exact same number said two different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. Okay, that was one of your most important discoveries. What's another one? Tell us another as you think about your work in Egyptology.
I did a paper several years ago on the significance of the color of Osiris.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
He's portrayed as green or black typically, and it was often thought that this was a fecundity, fertility motif.
Mm-hmm.
He's green because of the Nile, supposedly, and the green of the growing of the Nile. And I was doing some reading on how bodies decompose. And I came across this
just
really
casual reading on how
casual reading.
So this is what he had
reader.
sitting next to his breakfast, and you just put it on the table for a few days, and you ate meals with this reading. Anyway, go on.
Yes. I mean, that's one of the things, though. I have a very broad sense of interests.
Yeah.
So for me, doing a little bit of reading on forensics is okay. That's casual reading.
Mm-hmm.
But I ran across this really interesting statement that corpses tend to turn a green-black color as they decompose.
Mm-hmm.
And it usually happens within the first 36 hours in a process called marbling. And it's like, okay, this is a mummification culture. They're going to see this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was as I had that going through my mind, I tripped upon something else in the coffin texts, which is this really weird statement called where the goddess says, or the not the goddess, the deceased says, "My putrefaction is myrrh."
Huh.
And it was the original translator, Raymond Faulkner, just said, "I don't understand this. I don't get it." So anytime a luminary like that doesn't get something, there's something there to be mined, essentially. So I started looking up everything associated in the coffin text with decay, decomposition, stench, all of those, all that nasty stuff, all that nasty, gross stuff. Okay, and I started seeing this trend of, oh, take my decay and transform it, and it's like, well, transform it into what? And well, myrrh in case that's an incense. It's a resin. It's an incense. It's seen as something nice and pleasant in Egypt. Okay, very valuable myrrh. They imported it from Punt. So it was just something that they really, really treasured. So how do we relate this decay, the products of post-mortem decomposition, with valuable items? And what I discovered was that there was this transformation of apotheosis.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, really?
Where the deceased is said to become like the gods.
Yeah. Huh.
Having flesh of gold, bones of iron.
Wow.
And you can see this, for example, in the shipwrecked sailor, where the god is this massive snake whose flesh is pure gold.
Yeah.
And his eyes are lapis.
Huh. So now, did this apply to anybody then?
This could apply to anybody. Yeah, it's part of the funeral ritual.
So there was a how would you verbalize this? Apotheosis just for the everyday person.
Yeah. Yeah. It became a part of standard funeral ritual.
Huh.
This is why they were obsessed with gold on the deceased. We have there's actually even some examples of mummies that they put gold foil on the skin itself in an attempt to accelerate this through ritual. So that was sort of the goal, is to become godlike, so you'd stop decaying.
Yeah. Huh. Wow. Fascinating. Okay, that was number 2. Number 3.
Number 3. Okay, what else have I done here? Oh, a lot of small discoveries, a lot of small stuff.
Okay.
I was able to provide new translations for certain hieroglyphs.
Okay.
Like the Doorbolt. And this was one that was said to be again an uncertain rendering. And I found out that this Doorbolt is found on what was odd about this particular item is it appears in tomb robbery papyrus. Okay, appears in tomb robbery papyrus, but the translators weren't sure what it was. What the tomb robbers were stealing here. Because the tomb robbery, the priests in the temples, they said, okay, we have we're going to steal these items and replace it with wood mock-ups. Okay, well, what's something that you can replace quickly on a piece of ritual furniture that's not going to be seen? Okay, it can't be a hinge. It can't be a hinge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it can't be a latch, because it would make no sense to make a wood mock-up on that. But a sliding door bolt, and there's examples of these door bolts on the ritual chests of King Tut. And what's interesting is the tomb robbery papyrus mentions that it's silver. And silver is a really scarce commodity in New Kingdom Egypt. Really scarce. There's much more gold floating around than silver. But what was interesting was the Doorbolt on the on this particular chest, the shrine. Howard Carter, on his original card, said they were wood. He mistook it for wood. And later corrected it and said, oh, these are actually silver. They're just dark like wood.
Oh.
So I was even able to show there how the tomb robbers were able to get away with the switch.
Okay. Very interesting. All right, that was 3. Number 4.
Number 4. Wow, you're gonna see.
We are mining depths here.
You are mining depths here.
Yeah.
I did a paper on mining. Colored gold.
Yeah, good. Good. Well, instead of number 4, David, tell us what are you working on now? What has captured your attention?
One of the things that I've been working on recently is cultural engagement.
Okay.
Okay. One of the things of doing a teaching channel like we do, where we focus on ancient Egypt and the Bible,
Yeah.
is it really appeals to a certain kind of audience. Okay. And we knew this kind of get when we got into this, that this was not going to be like a mass appeal kind of ministry. It was going to appeal to basically a well-read audience already. People who are already, say, looking for more.
Mm-hmm.
They'd sort of kind of exhausted how much they can get out of their local church as far as feeding goes, and was looking for the next intellectual challenge that would help them grow in the Bible. Okay, so we kind of figured that, but we also didn't want to leave out other people too. So one of the things we've started doing is actually writing fiction.
Oh, wow.
So I've got my first
elaborate.
book. Like, basically, we are writing and publishing fiction that introduces some of these concepts, but makes it at a level that people can actually read about and enjoy. So my first novel is going to be coming out on the 15th.
Okay.
It is Reliquary of the Dead. Boop. Shameless plug.
Reliquary
Nice.
of the Dead in book format. Okay.
Yeah. So, in that particular one, I talk about a lot about archaeology, and start going into, say, some of the mythology of the ancient Near East, but set in the future.
Okay.
Interesting. Do you have like a protagonist, maybe somebody called like Michigan Cooper or something to follow on their archaeological journeys?
Oh yes, there is the protagonist is an archaeologist. He is an Egyptologist. His name is Pierre Goulet, a Frenchman.
Okay.
Great.
Excellent.
That's great. All right, so that book comes out this month.
That comes out this month in a few days.
April 15th,
April 15th.
in a few days.
And then we have the
People are
sequel to it
interested-
coming out in July 15th.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Quickly on its heels.
All right.
Yeah.
And if somebody were interested, where might they find it?
Amazon, Barnes & Noble,
Amazon?
all the major book
Okay.
resellers.
Uh-huh. All right. Great. Now, so cultural engagement, I know you have this really fascinating YouTube channel. I look at it with envy, seeing 19,000 views, 9,000 views, 13,000 views. Tell us about the channel. How do people access it?
We will
How do
link
they
it in the show
engage
notes.
with you? Yeah.
Okay, well, they can access it by just going to Ancient Egypt and the Bible on YouTube.
Okay.
It's that simple. We do a teaching video every Monday, and we do a question and answer live show every Friday.
Oh, great. All right.
And that goes on often for 4 hours.
Does it really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. The live show on Fridays?
Well,
Yeah.
clear your schedule, folks.
Yeah.
You've got a place to be on the interwebs on Fridays.
That's great. Well, we're so grateful, David, that you've joined us and really enlightened us about the things that you've been working on and helping us to wrestle with our understanding of the Old Testament. So we're grateful for your work and for your ministry.
Well, thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, David, it's been great having you on. I am certain that folks are going to click through these show notes, go on the YouTubes, and chase you down to keep up with the current research as well as the things that you're continuing helping us, the normies, engage with what God's doing in and through your work. So thank you, David, and then thank you, listeners, for joining us on this exploration of a different aspect. I know we've been talking a lot about some things that are happening in Asia Minor, and now it's been fun to talk through the Egyptology angle. So if you haven't caught up with some of our past episodes in this Archaeology Meets Missiology series, certainly invite you to go and check those out, as well as other episodes in the Ecclesiology podcast catalog. If you are interested in that online theological education, almost as David was describing, that there's more meat to be discovered, there's more to know, and I want to take on more, please go to masterclasses.ecclesiology.com. I'm certain it will be a benefit to you. So for Michael, David, and myself, thank you for doing theology and community with us today on the Ecclesiology podcast.